Hello, everyone. Today, we are going to build something really cool. We're going to build a vision AI application using Roboflow Instant. That's a brand new model we have created. And what it actually is, it's a few-shot object detection model. That means the model is not trained in the traditional sense, but it's rather prompted with some examples. And you can imagine it like this. You can see the image here on the right-hand side with a few apples. And you can actually label one image. You can label one apple, as you can see here. And by calculating the embeddings, the model is able to find similar looking objects on the image. And you don't even have to label the full image to get started. So the cool thing about it is that it requires very little data and it's ready to use immediately because you can skip the training process. The model will be very, very soon available on our inference deployments. So be on the lookout for that. We will discuss that later on. What we are building today is going to be a self-serve hardware store checkout pricing calculator. You can imagine it like this. You're going to the hardware store and you want to buy some screws and some bolts, maybe some washers. And since those are single items that you can pick one by one, they often actually don't have a pricing tag on them. So what we are going to build, we are going to build a vision AI application, as you can see here on the right-hand side, where you can place all the items that you've picked on a tray. And we want to store the end result in a database. You can see here on the bottom, we will have something like a database where we can send the total price of the checkout to, and we will have a list of all the items. So yeah, the cool thing is we're actually going to start from scratch and trying to do it in 10 minutes. We will capture the images live. We will annotate them live. We will fine tune a model. We will create a workflow. That's our low code, no code block builder that you can use to reduce the complexity of building a vision AI application. And we're gonna deploy and run it. I have a dedicated deployment. That's a server where our inference server is running on. I have that live and ready to be used. And I'm using Airtable, that's basically Google Sheets on steroids as a database. But you can imagine it like an online Excel sheet, and I'm gonna use that as a database. So I'm gonna do everything live. So things can go wrong. So please bear with me if something goes wrong. And as a colleague of mine said, Balthasar, don't screw it up. And with that, we're gonna hop into the demo. I'm gonna minimize my screen here. I'm gonna quickly show you here on the right-hand side, I have my Airtable database. We have a pricing list here. Our store has 3 items, a small screw, a large screw, and a washer, and we can define the price here. And in the end, we want to send all the results, all the checkout prices here into this table. What you can see here is a live webcam feed that I have here on my right-hand side. I can move my hand under here, you can see it. And we're gonna capture some images live with that. And as I said before, we try to do it in under 10 minutes. But if there are some small problems, it might take 1 or 2 minutes longer, but let's see how it goes. Let's get started. So I'm going to start the timer, and the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to place the small screws here on our tray. Once that is done, I'm going to use a keyboard shortcut to save an image on my computer. And then I'm going to place a few of the larger screws here on the tray. Taking another screenshot. And the last thing we're going to do, you can see it here on the right-hand side. We need the washers. So that's the final item of our store that we are using for today. Placing a few of them right here. Awesome. And we're gonna take another image. Then I'm going to shuffle it a little bit. So we have maybe a 4th image that we can use that's a little bit different. Saving that. And now we're going to create a project here that is going to be called self-serve checkout in Roboflow. we're going to work with items. I'm going to create that project. And I'm going to upload the 4 images we just captured. Once the images are uploaded, we will start a labeling job, and we will use our box prompting feature. That box prompting feature uses Roboflow Instant under the hood and is already available since a few weeks. And how it works is you can label one image, one item. We call that screw S, like we have here. And the model is already able to pick up a few predictions. As you can see, we all got them right already. We're going to approve them, and we're going to head on to the next image. That's the beauty of these few-shot object detectors. As you can see here, we got the large screws detected as well. So what I'm going to do before we continue, I'm going to create a class for the large screw that is going to be called screw L, and see how the model behaves. That actually looks pretty good. Let me see if I need to correct something. Nope. We got everything correct. Let's continue. Now we need to label one of the washers, so the model knows about them as well. Let me see. That all looks, we got the washers. Nice. That looks pretty good. We're going to approve all of the predictions, and now onto the final image. Let me see if everything is correct. Looks pretty good. Nothing I have to correct. Going to approve all of the predictions. And with that, I'm heading back here, and I will be adding 4 images to the data set. As you can see, we have now created a Roboflow Instant model. And I will pause in a second and give you a little bit more details. As you can see, the model is already ready to be used. We have a model ID, and you can infer on that model right away. I'm going to click on deploy, detect, count, and visualize. And I'm going to create a workflow from a template. I'm going to run it once. And once I've done that, I'm going to pause, and I'm going to tell you a little bit of what just happened. I'm going to select one of the images just to see what this does. This is, of course, the same image that the model has seen already. But now I'm going to pause here, the timer, take a breath, and then explain to you all what you can see here. As you can see here, this is the output of the workflow. We actually got the count of the objects, 15, and we got a nice visualized result. How is that possible? This is workflows. This is the no-code, low-code UI block builder that I mentioned before. And I selected a template that uses my instant model that I just created. And it's going to do 2 things. First of all, it predicts on the input image that we defined here. It adds a bounding box visualization and a label visualization, and it counts all the objects. So we're off to a pretty good start, but we need to connect to our database. And for that, we will need to write 2 custom Python blocks. It will be very, very little code that we need to write, but we will create 2 blocks. And we're also going to use a built-in webhook block to send the results back here to Airtable. That workflow is already deployable. We have a URL for that. You can see it if you go here. You can use our SDK, or if you click on the docs, you can see we also have a HTTP REST API endpoint. So that's all ready to be used, and thus this is just a UI that actually queries it for you and gives you that result here on the right-hand side. Cool. One more thing about the instant model. The instant model was created because we added a trigger that creates an instant model automatically when you add images to your data set the first time. This is helpful, so you have your model ready to go and can start using it immediately. And after you added some images the first time, there's a button that you can click to create a new version of that model. Cool. Now let's resume the timer and keep on building. What I need to do now, I need to add a few parameters. First thing I need to do, since we will be using Airtable integration, is I'm going to use the API key, prefixing it with bearer, because that's how the authorization headers expected. We will need a URL where we will send our logs to. That's that URL basically right here to add to this table. And I'm going to add another URL that is going to list the prices. I'm going to save that. And I'm going to create a custom Python block. And what that block is going to do is it's going to list the prices from the API. It's taking a URL as input, as well as an API key. And as an output, we want to have a pricing mapping basically returned, which is going to be a dictionary. Now we need to write a few lines of code, but it's actually very straightforward. We need to import requests, so we can make a HTTP request, and the request has a header, and the headers are going to look like that. We're going to use the API key here. Then we're going to fire off the request, which is pretty straightforward. We do a GET requests to the URL, and the headers are the headers we just defined. And we want that as a JSON. Now the last thing we need to do is just create the pricing mapping that block is going to return. And that is going to be straightforward. It's going to be for every record in the records that are returned from the API, we want to create a key value pair. So basically, the API returns it at the property fields, and there we will have the ID. That's basically what we have here, the ID. And we will map that to the price. So fields, price. Awesome. And now we just need to return that. We're going to say pricing mapping is our pricing mapping. Then we're going to save that block and then save it and create our second custom Python block, which is going to calculate the pricing. To calculate the pricing, before I do that, we actually need two things. We need to change the count objects to actually return a list of class names. How that is going to work is we can just here say we want to extract the property and we want to extract the class name property. How that looks like is we're going here to output, say this is the class names, and already updated. And when I run the workflow, we will not be getting a count, but we will be rather getting a list of all the classes that were detected in the image. So we can use that to calculate the price, to just sum everything up when it's combined with the prices here. Back to the custom block that we wanted to write, calculate pricing. It's gonna take some class names that we've just defined. These are a list of values. And the second thing we need is the pricing, of course. This is going to be a dictionary. Gonna use that here. And what are we going to output? We are going to output the dictionary, what we want to send here to Airtable, to our database, so we can store it here. And that's basically containing a price and items. To do that, it's actually pretty straightforward. We're just going to say total price is the sum of the pricing where we are getting the item. And if the item doesn't exist, we take 0 as the price for each item in class names. So that's the total price. And now we just need to return it. That is going to be price, exactly like you see it here. The price, we're just going to format it a little bit nicer. We're going to say total price and use floating point precision of 2 here to return that. And items is going to be a list of items that we are going to join with a comma. We're going to join all the class names and we're going to send that as a string to the API. And now we just need to do data to save is going to be data to save. And with that, we should be nearly done. Next thing we need to do, we need to put it all together and send the data here. To do that, I'm first going to list the prices. I'm going to say the URL is the URL list and the API key is the API key that we defined in the beginning. I am going to add a calculate pricing because now we have everything we need as an input here. we want the class names, and we want the price mapping. So everything already correct here. We're going to save that. And now we need to add one more final block, which is the webhook sync, which sends a request to a remote API with workflow results. That is exactly what we want. So I'm going to select the URL of that endpoint. I'm going to say it's a post request. We just need to add authorization header, which is going to be, we're going to reference the inputs API key here. We're going to add a JSON property, which is going to be, it expects a field property where we can put the data to save. And then we're just going to say we want the result here as well. And with that, we are actually done. I'm just going to put it here to the output. So we have a response that we can look at. The data that we want to be saved is that. And the next thing is we want the webhook response to also be shown. So I'm going to save that. I'm going to stop the time. And with that, we are done. This is how our workflow looks like. We're going to run it in a second and see if it actually works. But what it's going to do, of course, we run our instant model on every image that is uploaded. We're going to extract the class names, and we're going to get the prices from our API, what you can see here. We're going to calculate the pricing, and then we're going to send it back here to our Airtable. And we still have the visualization going on the other side. And now comes the final moment. We will test it with a new image then as well. But let's test it with that image right here. I'm going to run it. Let's see what happens. Cool. You see, it popped up here in our Airtable in the database, $2.16. We got a list of all the items. And that's actually just the result. We can visualize the result. We can see that looks really, really good. And what I'm going to do now, I'm going to change the price for some of the items. Because of inflation, everything got a little bit more expensive. But just the washer, yeah, the washer is incredibly expensive. So we're going to save that. We're going to run that again. And we updated the price here. That worked. If you want, what we can do, now come the cool things. We can update that a little bit, move some stuff here, remove some of those. So we have a new image. Gonna save that. Going to select that image here. Gonna run that as well. Should be a different price. Got the result. That's an image that the model has never seen before. Of course, it's pretty similar, but it's actually a new image. So that worked pretty good. And the last thing I'm going to show you, and then I'm done with the demo. We're actually going to prepare the image a little bit, so it's a little bit cooler. So we have the price on the image as well. What we can do here is we can say we want an input image into the calculate pricing as well. This is going to be an image, and we want the image with price as a response as well. This is also going to be an image. And now I'm just going to copy some code so I don't have to write it from scratch. But it's pretty straightforward. It's 3 lines. It's basically, hey, I'm copying the input image. We will put some text on the input image, and we will create an object of the same format again. And then we're just going to return it and say image with price. But this is just something optional. I just think it's cool to do that, to have that there as well, but definitely not needed. So I'm going to save that. Then we need to calculate pricing because the input image is missing. We actually want to use the labeled image here. You see, now the workflow has changed, and we use the labeled image, the prices, and the class names as the input here. And for the output, we say we don't want the annotated image to the custom. Of course, we want to show the image with the price. I'm gonna save that, run the workflow. And here on our top right-hand side, we got the price annotated as well. Got the result here as well. If you run that in production, as I said, this is already deployed. You have an endpoint ready to go that you can call via SDK, CLI, or whatever. If you want to run that in production and make the model better over time, you can just use a Roboflow dataset upload block, which basically gives you active learning right out of the box. You can say, I want to upload to this project. These are the predictions I want to send. And I want to have 50% of everything that a customer uploads. I want to save in my data set. You have a lot of options you can do there, and you can call this optionally. So yeah, that was the demo. I'm going to hop back in here. Summarizing. The model requires very little data, and you can use it really, really quickly. But of course, there are some limitations. So it's a rather heavy model. We benchmarked it with 10 FPS on the NVIDIA L4 GPU. But still, it helps you to iterate really, really quick on a model. You can get going right away, and you get a really, really good model out of the box. We believe it's great for training or fine-tuning a first model for any project. However, it works really, really well in controlled environments, as you just saw, where we have like a fixed camera setup. It looks pretty similar, but it can also work in more complex environments. Next thing for us is we want to evaluate that model really, really good and enable it for everything else we have in our app: model evaluation, auto labeling, everything that we have. And the model will be available very, very soon, either tonight or tomorrow morning in the Roboflow app. The fine-tuning of an instant model is going to be free, and you can deploy it. You can run the preview in the browser. You can run it on localhost or on a dedicated deployment, what I just showed. And in the future, we have a serverless hosted API offering. In the future, we will support a hosted API with GPU as well. So if you're interested in that, you can run that model then there as well. Give us a ping. And of course, you can use it in batch processing as well. And yeah, so that's it from my side. Thank you all for joining today. And yeah, we have a weekly webinar every week, so it would be cool to see you all again. Thank you.